In this video we are going to take a closer look at Deathwatch list building with the updated Arks of Omen rules based on my own personal list example. In the first part, we will go through my main considerations when making my list changes, attempting to capitalize on the strengths of the Arks of Omen rule changes for the Deathwatch. In the second part, we will then go through the actual changes themselves based on my old Army of Renown list. Lastly, there will be a quick wrap up of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer and I will be guiding you through this video.
For the purposes of this video, I am going to assume that you guys are roughly familiar with the sum of recent rules changes, namely the Balance Dataslate, Monitorum Field Manual Points changes, chapter approved Arks of Omen GT mission pack, as well as the fact that our Army of Renown is no longer playable. For a more detailed coverage, feel free to check out my recent videos covering all these changes, the links are in the description. First of all, when building an army list in Arks of Omen, we now have to use the Arks of Omen Detachment. Technically, this detachment no longer forces us into picking the troops battlefield role as the 3 mandatory picks, but if anything, I would argue that one of the big benefits for Deathwatch is sticking to troops, aka our kill teams. The main reasons for this are the new sticky objective rule for Space Marine troops, as well as the core secondaries, assassination, behind enemy lines and grind them down, providing a CP gain when done by the troops battlefield role. For a generally CP-starved Deathwatch, I think this is too good an opportunity to not capitalize on, especially for grind them down, and also given that our own faction-specific secondary, Call Order, can be considered niche at best, leaving us starved for strong auto-include type of secondaries, like for instance Long Vigil used to be in many matchups back in Warzone Nephilim. As such, even though our Army of Renown is gone, and we technically no longer have to stick to kill teams, characters and transports only, my recommendation here would be to take the Arks of Omen Detachment with the troops choice and mainly investing into kill teams. Another advantage of this is that if you were already heavily investing into kill teams before, the transition to the new list might not be all that great in the first place. As I was saying in my rules previews, while Deathwatch may have both gained and lost some, this is definitely the one area we can hugely profit from. Having said that, one extra consideration here would also be that we can take a 4th HQ or even double up on a captain, to which I will get back to in the second part of the video. Furthermore, with the loss of our Army of Renown, we are also losing the ability to take a Warlord trade on a Sergeant through the AUR exclusive stratagem, which means in case we want to go for Lord of Deceit to redeploy our Spectre's kill team, which I think remains an auto-include with the Arks of Omen missions and sticky objectives, we now have to bring a Phobos HQ to put that Warlord trade on. While the 4th HQ slot opens up some possibilities here, like for instance we could invest into a Phobos Lieutenant in Reaver armor, the most points efficient way to run it in my opinion is picking a Phobos Librarian. With our Deathwatch Xenopurge discipline powers in mind, the Librarian is a character that you can allow to hang back as much as possible, which should allow him to keep up with the rest of the army, regardless of not having a jump pack, and I think especially when paired with other slow characters, like a Watchmaster or an Apothecary, the movement should not be a huge restriction. Regarding the points changes themselves, I provided some detailed math hammer for this in my last episode, but in a nutshell, for the primary skill teams, the Indomitor kill team with Plasma Inceptors and or Boltstorm Aggressors hugely benefits, and so does the Forest kill team with Outriders. Given that veteran bikers have pretty much been butchered by the changes, if you were running a Proteus kill team with infantry bikes before, you want to swap that out for the Outriders counterpart. But even if you didn't, I think putting the Outriders back in for objective grabbing and move blocking is an excellent idea anyway. Then lastly, while the Proteus kill team may have gained a lot of free war gear, they have also lost a lot of competitive loadouts. My recommendation here would be to stick to a Clangby or Costello style kill team, which may have been side graded in points, but they are still very durable due to storm shields and the hammers still deliver. I think another consideration here is point savings and bringing more bodies, which is best done through the primary skill teams versus bringing durable units with storm shields, in which case Proteus kill teams and especially Terminators become really great picks. For the primary skill teams, especially the Indomitor one, the Dominus Aegis relic is a must-have again as far as I'm concerned, and further buff layering like a Feel No Pain save goes a long way. With these general considerations out of the way, how exactly did I change my own list? Well, first of all, my old Army of Renown list looked as following. For HQs, I had a Jump-Pack Chaplain due to points constraint, a Phobos Librarian and a Watchmaster. For troops, I then had a Forest Kill team with Assault Hellblasters, an Indomitor with Boltstorm Aggressors, double Proteus kill teams, one a Clangby style kill team and the other with infantry bikes, as well as a Spectres kill team with Eliminators. To round the list up, I just about managed to squeeze in a Chief Apothecary. Now, somewhat hilariously, this list would not get that big point savings at first glance. We are talking about roughly 120 points, excluding any free war gear I could now additionally take, but the point here is that due to the Proteus kill teams, as well as the specialisms going up, my only real major savings would be on the Indomitor kill team. Now, with the previously covered considerations in mind, I want to stick to 5 kill teams, which will allow me to capitalize on the troops' battlefield role improvements. I am also the type going slow with list changes, trying to work with what I have before throwing everything completely out of the window. At least for myself, it takes quite a while to get the hang of a completely new list. With that in mind, the first thing that had to go was the Proteus kill team with the infantry bikes, which I replaced with the now far more attractive Forest kill team with Outriders. Furthermore, I then dropped the Forest kill team with the Assault Hellblasters instead. The reason here is that Plasma Inceptors are so much more points efficient now that there is really no competition anymore. As a result, I doubled up on the Indomitor kill team. Finally those heavy intercessors are pulling their weight, and I settled for one Indomitor with 5 Plasma Inceptors, as well as one with 3 Plasma Inceptors and 2 Boltstorm Aggressors. The reason I like the latter is that you get some counterpunch potential with the aggressors in case you get tagged in close combat. It also helped me ending up closer to 2k points, which has become far more difficult now with all the free war gear. Luxury problems, I guess. For my 5th and final kill team, the Clangby style Proteus kill team, I filled this up with free war gear, basically combat shield on the Sarge, as well as combi flamers and storm shields on all the vets. The idea here is to get a bit of Overwatch potential with the vets, and I also think that this particular kill team has enough punch already with all the heavy hammers. It would of course also be possible to take power fists instead. Then lastly, because I think that the loss of Armor of Contempt demands the return of the Dominus Aegis relic, I made good use of the Arks of Omen Detachment and added a 4th HQ, namely the Captain on Bike with the free Storm Shield, and you can also add a free combi or non-Thunderhammer melee weapon of choice. In addition to providing a big base and the Aegis, I think having 2 hit reroll HQs with all the Plasma Inceptors is a great idea and well worth the points. The Captain on Bike is also far more mobile than the comparably slow Watchmaster. Furthermore, I switched the Chaplain back to the Biker and gave my Librarian the Chief upgrade, because I am really liking the option to have Mantle of Shadow handy when the situation demands for it. Last but not least, because points allowed, I added in 2 specialisms on my 2 most threatening kill teams, which I think is a good compromise now that the points for them have gone back up. Overall, this leaves me with 5 kill teams and 5 characters, with the latter being one too many for comfort. I might look into dropping 1 and perhaps freeing points for a Redemptor or another non-kill team unit. I think both Chief Librarian and Chief Apothecary add a lot of value to kill team heavy lists, but perhaps doubling up on both Watchmaster and the Captain is a bit too much. Back to Chapter Master rerolls versus Dominus Sieges, I guess. Furthermore, I would absolutely love to make use of some of the free war gear, like Terminator with assault cannons, or Wets with Infernus heavy bolters, but for now I am sticking to my more established kill team compositions. Anyway, what has me a bit on the wrong foot is the secondary game, and I feel like I need to get a couple extra games in to make up my mind fully. Ultimately, I think grind them down and perhaps the good old banners should work well with this sort of list, and shock tactics can be played well in Deathwatch as well. On the other hand, I also think we are lacking a strong steady secondary, unless Call Order really finds its niche in the meta, where people will end up with easy battlefield role picks for us, because they don't really pay attention to Deathwatch with their small player base. What really has me intrigued though, would be a second of the core secondaries awarding CP for troops, which would be behind enemy lines, but I think for that I might need some more mobility on my kill teams. While I am currently staying clear of vehicles, including multiple dreadnoughts, as I think other chapters are doing it better, I would not dismiss any such lists out of hand. All in all, I am liking the fact that we are far more relaxed on overall points now, and I am back to feeling like I am actually getting my share of kill teams with enough war gear for the points. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at approaching Deathwatch list building with the updated Arks of Omen rules in mind, and without throwing a former Army of Renown list completely out of the window. Personally, I think one of the main strengths from all these changes for the Deathwatch is sticking to kill teams and their troops' battlefield role, which really has us benefit a lot thanks to sticky objectives and core secondaries, like grind them down, now also providing CP, a resource that tends to be in short supply in Deathwatch lists. Some general things to keep in mind are Lord of Deceit requiring a Phobos HQ again, now that the Army of Renown is gone, as well as new and old possibilities opening up with the 4th HQ and the return of the Dominus Sieges for at least our primary skill teams. As far as points are concerned, while I did a full SwissHammer rundown in a previous episode, I think Indomitor kill teams with Plasma Inceptors are a really good pick. And for anyone interested in infantry bikes, the Forest kill team is now the way to go. For my personal list, I am going with 5 kill teams and 5 characters for the time being, including a Forest kill team with Outriders, double Indomitor with mostly Plasma Inceptors, a single Clangby style Proteus kill team, as well as a Spectres one. For me personally, this is walking a fine line between playing something I am more or less familiar with, yet still making good use of these most recent changes. Ultimately, only time will tell how it goes, especially as far as secondaries are concerned. So that's it for my first approach to Deathwatch list building in Arks of Omen. What kinds of changes have you guys been doing to your own lists? And are you sticking to mostly kill teams like I do? Any good combos or datasheets I have overlooked completely? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.